I feel mesmerized.
Mesmerizing.
You mesmerize me.
Mesmerizing.
To be mesmerized is to fall under the spell of something that fascinates us. We become so entranced that the rest of the world seems to fade away. Many people are surprised to learn that the word comes from the name of a physician who lived 2.5 centuries ago, Franz Anton Mesmer. This charismatic figure sought to heal illness by inducing altered states of consciousness in his patients. Though his theories were ridiculed by the medical profession, the astonishing cures he achieved won him thousands of followers, including the Queen of France. Mesmer's star of destiny lifted him to the heights of glory, then dropped him into disgrace and oblivion. But his work opens a window to the enchanted history of healing and hints at powers of the mind we have only begun to glimpse. How did Mesmer stumble upon the discovery that would someday turn his name into a vocabulary word? It began with frustration. The doctor had built up a successful practice in Vienna using all the conventional treatments of his day. But in 1774, he was asked to help a very ill patient named Franziska von Osterlin. Franzel, as she was called, had for years suffered from painful ailments such as fever, headaches, delirium, intestinal inflammation, convulsions, and more. Mesmer tried every remedy he knew, but Franzel was sinking lower and lower under his care. Then the doctor recalled something curious. There was a famous Jesuit priest and astronomer named Maximilian Hell, yes, his real name, who successfully had treated many illnesses with the use of magnets. Now, the idea of magnetic healing had always fascinated Mesmer. His doctoral dissertation, entitled The Influence of the Planets on the Human Body, theorized that the cosmos is permeated by a subtle magnetic force, which he sometimes called a fluid, that connects all of creation into relationships of mutual influence. This force flows through our bodies like tides, but if it gets blocked or disordered, we become ill. Could these magnetic tides in our body be pulled into alignment with actual magnets? Mesmer wondered. It was worth a try. A short time later, Franzel lay in her bed, while the doctor and the priest placed specially fashioned pieces of magnetized metal upon her feet and her head. She began screaming that the metal burned her skin like fire. Family members begged for these terrible treatments to stop, but Mesmer resolutely placed even more magnets upon her body to keep the currents flowing. These difficult treatments were repeated several times a day for the next few days, and to everyone's amazement, Franzel began feeling better and gaining energy. Before long, nearly all of her symptoms had vanished, and she began living the active, healthy life that had eluded her for many years. Word spread quickly through Vienna society about this wondrous cure. Patients began flocking to Mesmer's door, begging for magnetic treatments. The doctor soon discovered that he could dispense with using physical magnets in his work. The energy flow through his own body could be directed as a healing force. Everyone possesses natural animal magnetism, he believed, but some individuals, like himself, are more highly charged by nature. Inspired by this conviction, Mesmer launched his spectacular career. By the year 1780, we find the doctor living in Paris, wealthy and famous, hosting guests at his home like Benjamin Franklin, Amadeus Mozart, Joseph Haydn, and the Marquis de Lafayette, who had recently helped America win its War of Independence. But Mesmer's most powerful friend was the Queen herself, Marie Antoinette. she often invited him to the palace to give her the revitalizing magnetic treatments that all of France was raving about. We wonder, what would it be like to step back in time and witness the great man at work? Well, let us transport ourselves to the Hotel Bouillon in Paris, which Mesmer purchased to house his treatment rooms. We enter an elegant chamber softly lit by candles in the chandeliers above us. We breathe in fragrant incense, and ethereal music from a glass harmonica makes us feel like we have stepped into another world. We see heavy curtains on the walls embroidered with signs of the zodiac, and they hint of greater forces at work around us. Now our attention is drawn to a covered wooden tub with metal rods protruding from holes in the top. This is one of Mesmer's famous baquettes, where groups of patients can receive magnetic treatments. The rods dip into water, magnetized with metal filaments and the doctor's own electric energies. Enters now the master. He is dressed magnificently in a purple silk robe and golden shoes. Holding a white metal wand in his hand, he strides towards his supplicants like a god. He seems to know their individual needs. Some patients receive hands-on treatment as he applies pressure to energy receptor points on their body, all the while grasping their knees between his own. Other patients he touches with his wand in areas that need healing. Mesmer's aim is to intensify the magnetic field of a person's body so that their nervous system will reach a kind of crisis, as it was called, and correct its disorders. Here is an eyewitness report of how different people react during a magnetizing session. Some are calm, tranquil. Others cough, spit, or are affected with a slight degree of pain. A third class are agitated and tormented with convulsions that are characterized by involuntary motions of all the limbs, by wildness of the eyes, by shrieks, tears, hiccupings, or immoderate laughter. Nothing can be more astonishing than the sight of these convulsions. He that has not seen it can have no idea of it. One cannot help but acknowledge the presence of a great power which moves and controls patients and which resides in the magnetizer. Mesmer's theory of animal magnetism and his wizard-like demonstrations of cure won him great acclaim. But not everyone applauded. The medical profession as a whole rejected these theories as nonsense or outright charlatanism. They insisted that conventional medical treatments such as bloodletting, blistering, and the drinking of mercury were far safer and more effective than Mesmer's medieval hocus-pocus. And rumors circulated that magnetizers sometimes took liberties with patients who fell into a swoon during treatments. And the convulsive crises that overtook patients, did they not look suspiciously orgasmic? Eventually, pressure was put on King Louis XVI to launch an investigation of animal magnetism and its practitioners. The king may have had his own reasons for looking into the matter because his wife always seemed to have an unusually happy smile on her face after her treatments with Dr. Mesmer. Benjamin Franklin, who was serving as the United States ambassador to France, was appointed to head the commission. His team acknowledged at the outset that Mesmer's cures are numerous and of an astonishing nature. But they made the decision not to investigate these cures, nor to interview any patient who had received magnetic treatments. Instead, they would confine their study to proving or disproving the existence of animal magnetism as an independent force, in the same way that electricity had been proven to have an independent existence. When Mesmer heard about the committee's intentions, he was furious. He took personal offense that his work was being put on trial and that none of his patients would even be interviewed. He refused to take part in the investigation. One of his devoted followers, Dr. Charles Deslon, cooperated with the committee instead. After observing Deslon at work, and after carrying out a series of scientific experiments, the investigators concluded that animal magnetism did not exist. Its apparent effects on patients were due to imagination and the personal influence of the practitioner. They concluded their 66-page report with a statement that would ring throughout France. Magnetism without imagination produces nothing. They went on to say that they have concluded with a unanimous voice that the existence of magnetic fluid is absolutely destitute of proof, and that the fluid, having no existence, can consequently have no use. News of the damning report spread quickly, dealing a near-fatal blow to Mesmer's reputation and slamming the door on any possibility that his theories would ever be accepted by scientists and physicians. The doctor announced that he was leaving France, but first he collected a small fortune in funds from subscribers to whom he promised he would reveal his secrets. Mesmer never followed through on the promise, vanishing under cloak of night with all of the money. He practiced for a time in Switzerland, then lived in seclusion until he died at the age of 81 in his native Germany. The saga of Mesmer and his work seemed to be over, but actually it had just begun. Societies sprang up across Europe to teach the skills of magnetizing. Within a few years, thousands of reports were flowing in from Europe, Britain, and the United States about the stunning power of these methods. Surgical operations were performed on entranced patients painlessly, and they included amputations of limbs and the removal of cancerous tumors. Researchers also noticed that some individuals demonstrated clairvoyance and other psychic abilities while in states of altered consciousness. Then something interesting happened. Practitioners stopped calling themselves magnetizers and began calling themselves mesmerists. The theory of animal magnetism, so hotly debated only a few decades before, now had lost its importance as an explanatory framework. And before long, the art of entrancement would be reframed as neurohypnotism, or later called hypnotism, and be accepted at last by the medical community. It seems that Mesmer's prodigal child had finally found its way home. How should we remember the man who started it all? He was a learned physician who played music with Mozart, debated ideas with Benjamin Franklin, and won the adoration of a queen. He was also a showman, a wizard, and perhaps a bit of a charlatan. But his true genius sprang from a deeper source. Mesmer knew how to conjure enchantment. He knew how to entice consciousness out of its old worn tracks and lead it into new, vitalizing territories. He instinctively understood, as shamans and folk healers had understood for tens of thousands of years before him, that healing can be mobilized by engaging all five senses and evoking the mystical. That's why he made lavish use of colorful costumes, astrological symbols, music, incense, and most of all, the human touch. They awaken powers of the mind that lay slumbering in everyday life. We remember how critics of Mesmer charged that his extensive and astonishing cures were achieved by no other means than stimulating the patient's imagination. If we grant their point, our sense of awe only deepens. What is this fine sorcery called imagination that can heal ailments of the body and open psychic abilities of the mind? Shouldn't we be finding more ways of courting its power? What would our hospitals and therapy offices look like if we added a touch of enchantment to their characters? Mesmer would have enjoyed these questions, but may not have answered us. He would be too focused on his patients at the banquet, ushering them into deeper entrancement with his voice, his touch, and his spectacle, invoking once again the miracle of healing that is our birthright. We watch him, and all we can say is mesmerizing.
Mesmerizing.
Mesmerizing.